Welcome to Happily Ever After, the podcast where we talk about life's big stories, from breakups and breakdowns to icky secrets and happy endings. It's the stuff that makes us human. I'm your host, Hannah Harvey. I'm a writer and a parenting blogger at mumsdays.com. I'd be really grateful if you could subscribe and leave a review because it basically means more people can find the podcast. And I also absolutely love hearing from you, so please do contact me through Instagram at mumsdays, MUMSDAYS, with any of your stories and any thoughts you might have on the episode or any questions. You can find all the details from this episode in the show notes.
This episode contains discussions of domestic abuse, sexual assault, and childhood sexual abuse. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Happily Ever After. It's me, Hannah, and today I'm joined by Rie Pearson, who is responsible for an amazing campaign called Be Kind, No Excuses, and it's a guide to help teenage girls recognise abusive behaviours in intimate relationships. And this is something I've been thinking about for quite some time because basically these patterns in relationships are happening all the time. And I keep thinking, why are we not taught this at school? Like, why do we have to learn it in our 40s, basically? So, hi, Rie.
Hello.
I'm going to try and keep this down to a length of podcast episode that is suitable, but I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about. So thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And would you mind giving me a bit of background as to how you've basically come to what you're doing now? Because I know
Well, I'm a retired police officer. When I
Okay.
was a police officer, I worked for Northumbria Police for 27 years. But I was a single mum for a long time. I've got 3 children. They're now technically adults. Whether they are actually adults is another thing. So I was single for a long time, and I live at the seaside, and children at the seaside have expensive hobbies like kayaking.
Yeah.
And I needed additional income. So I always had what we would call a side hustle. And as part of that side hustle, I was a member of a business network. And when we went into the first lockdown, we were on a Zoom call instead of meeting. You know, you have the monthly meetings, and we were on a Zoom call. And they were panicking. I mean, we all were. If you think back to the very beginning, we were like, what's happening? We're locked in the house. We can't go anywhere. What's happening with my business? What's happening with my staff? And it was a very frightening time. And the first Zoom call, they were really flapping. And I was like, I'm not coming off this call without something positive coming out of it. And I said, well, in the time that you've put your baby down, because essentially if you're a self-employed person, your business is your baby, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You know, you're going to take this time and do something positive. And they were thinking, and it's like, oh, I'm going to go out that hour we're allowed out of the house. Can you remember that? Can you imagine them trying to get us to do that again? No. So that I'm going to learn how to do Nordic walking, or I'm going to go on YouTube and learn how to paint with watercolours, and I'm going to go back to my knitting, or, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And I said, well, I have got a book in the back of my mind, because I worked strategically with domestic abuse as well as on the front line. And I had this book in the back of my head about how the pattern of relationships seemed to me to show red flags really early on when you start dating somebody.
Yeah.
There are things you can see in their attitudes, and not just towards you, but towards others. And I thought, well, if I create that book and have that published, then I'll just go back to bed, and that'll be done, and that'll be my contribution. But it had been in the back of my head for about 15 years. So a month passed, and we're back on the Zoom call because we're still in lockdown, and everybody's saying, oh, and I've done this, and I've done that, and da-da-da. And they said, well, how's the book coming on? And I was like, what book? And because I've got ME, and sometimes I say things, and I meet people and then I forget. And I'd completely forgotten that I'd said it.
Oh.
And they said, well, you were going to write this book. And I was like, oh, yes, so I did. Yeah, I remember that. And then things started to happen, because what I wanted true stories. I didn't want to just spout loads of statistics about how many women are killed every week and how many women are killed on the planet and what the statistics are, blah, blah. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make it stories because I wanted it to be aimed at a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, bearing in mind that I was a police officer and dealing with abuse when it's at crisis point, and you know, there's a lot of abuse and probably 1% of it gets called in to the police. So I was dealing with that crisis point, and that was, in my experience, all male perpetrators. There were male victims, but it was all male perpetrators. So I wanted to direct it at teenagers, but I wanted to tell them stories. And then I had stories and women drop into my email and into my messages on social media saying, please, would you tell my story? So off the back of that, we have 5 true stories. Now, a lot of women started writing, but it's re-traumatizing yourself through a very bad time, and a lot of them couldn't do it. A lot of them, although they're anonymous, a lot of them said, if I write my story, my family will know it was me.
Yeah.
So they couldn't put that in the book. I had a lady whose ex-husband was sent to jail for abusing their pets, killing their dog, and she couldn't write her story. It was just too traumatic for her. So we ended up with 5. And
But there are so many more, right?
Well, there are just...
Yeah.
I did a book launch on Tuesday night, and every woman who was at that event had a story to tell. Mostly about themselves. Because it's just... It's actually normal.
I was going to say it's more pervasive than we could ever realise.
And we don't talk about it, and that's why we need to talk about it with teenagers when they are forming their first relationships. Now, I say intimate relationships. By intimate relationship, I mean boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, and everything else. And parents don't like me using the word intimate. So I say when they start dating, because you don't want to think of your teenager having an intimate relationship. But what I mean from that is not a familial one, not a brother or a sister or a cousin So a dating type relationship. And they need to see what those early signs are. Because of the 5 brave women in that book, 4 of them were teenagers when they met their perpetrator-to-be. And every one of them, within an hour of meeting their perpetrator, there was a red flag. Because it's an attitude.
And it's spotting that. And I think there's something romanticised about being in these relationships. Like there are songs in the charts right now about I'm in an unhealthy relationship and I like it. Is that one about I keep running through red flags? Or there's that Shania Twain song with, I can't remember who it's with, but they talk about...
It's with Anne-Marie.
Anne-Marie, yeah. Even if it kills me, you'll always be my man. Like, what the actual fuck are we trying to teach our kids here?
Yeah.
And this is popular music. They should be ashamed of themselves, and I love Shania Twain.
I do.
And I'm like, what is it? But it's catchy. And you find yourself singing it.
You find yourself... But there have been songs for generations.
Yeah.
There's a song about where he goes to the dad and says, can I ask for her hand? And the dad says no. And then the guy's like, well, I'm going to ask her anyway. And I just think, two men
deciding
treating her like a possession. And that was just a couple of years ago. There are lots of, you'll never find someone who loves you as much as I do. That's a line, isn't it?
Yeah. And I love you so much, but
of course you will, because you're an idiot. Get away.
Yeah. But it's like we're taught that this roller coaster is what love is about.
Romance.
If you want to be in love, it has to be
drama,
dramatic, traumatic. It has to be painful. It has to be so amazing that it hurts.
And that's nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's like if you're with a nice person,
you've also got to remember that people who come from dramatic families, where drama is the normal, they will then go on to bond and want that. That's their normal.
Yeah, that's what feels safe in the brain.
Yeah, I'm not criticising them for that, because that's what
Was
they've been
modelled.
brought up to see, and that's what they think is all right. That's what they think's expected often. So if you've got somebody who's drama, meet somebody who's come from a calm family, where her family is drama, and that's what she thinks he expects, and he's been traumatized by her drama. And you think, what on earth is going on? But it's romanticized by Hollywood, it's romanticized by TV. I mean, Ross Geller chased Rachel Green for 10 years. We watched that for 10 series, didn't we? And I love that program. Things like Love Actually, where he turns up at the door with the cards, because he can't say it out loud because her husband's in the next room, because he's in love with her. If somebody
And that's why he's a dick to her all the time.
If somebody turned at my house with these flashcards telling me they're on down love and that was my husband's best friend, I would be phoning the busies. That's horrific. But that's Love Actually, one of the most famous Christmas movies of all time. Crazy. But I mean, I blame the Brontes.
The Brontes.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell, those guys.
Rich man, not so wealthy woman. They don't get along. Suddenly everything's fine. I love you. Let's get married. Oh, okay then. I will possess you. But at that time, women literally did own. Women were owned by their fathers, and then they were owned by their husband.
Yes. So we're still going through the process.
I love the Brontes,
of
by
the
the way.
fallout. Oh yeah, of
I
course.
do. Absolutely. Just got Anne Bronte that I've never read. So yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we're unlearning all of the stuff that
it's-
was insistent
It's
upon
the
women.
patriarchy,
Yeah.
the ownership, and it's gone on for such a long time now. I think it's genetic in most men, and they
And
need to
women.
be. And I mean, there's internalized misogyny in women as well. It needs to be unlearned, and men need to be protected from the patriarchy, because men are suffering too,
Yeah.
and the responsibilities on all of us are to protect our children. I mean, I'm not here. I've got 3 kids, and my job is, when they were teenagers, and one of them still is, my job is not to judge them on the mistakes they make. We criticise our teenagers. Teenagers are programmed to seek attention. That's what they do. It's in their DNA. And then we criticise them for that. I'm not there to judge my kid for making mistakes, because, God, I've made mistakes. I'm surprised I'm not dead.
I know, same.
When I look back at when I was 14, 15, I think, oh my goodness, if my daughter did that, what? But
So
you
how
know,
are
we
you
need
educating your kids then? Are you talking them through
Totally.
what you
very,
did?
very open, very honest conversations about absolutely everything,
Yeah.
because my job is to safeguard them, not to judge them. If you, and I hear this all of the time, and it's horrendous, so here's a trigger warning, okay?
Yeah.
When I talk about rape,
Okay.
many young women have come to me and said they've been raped, and the circumstances were they went out with somebody that their parents told them not to go out with, or went to a party their parents told them they weren't allowed to go to, and they got themselves into a situation where they couldn't get out of it, because they couldn't phone their parent, because their parent would kick off.
I asked you not to go. I said
I
you
told you not to
Yeah.
go. You're grounded. And grounding is a whole different conversation. Like, what the hell? But parents reacting in a way that is unsafe for their children, even though the parents think, well, I told them, and I'm the person, I'm the disciplinarian, I'm in charge. Well, actually, your job is to safeguard your kid.
Yeah.
So I always said to mine, you will go to places and you will do things that I have told you not to and I disagree with. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're frightened, where something's happening that you're not comfortable with, if you're at risk, you ring me and I will come and get you, whatever day it is, whatever time it is, wherever it is, I will come and get you. And I'm not going to ask you any questions.
I'm going to cry.
But that's what parenting is about. Because they would tell me, I mean, they tell me now, we had a party at the weekend and the lads were telling me things and I was like, I'm so glad you didn't tell me at the time. But, if they were ever at risk, they could safely, and they would have, but they never, as far as I'm aware, put themselves in any danger.
But I guess that's the thing.
But
if
the opportunity, for me, I was there to protect them. That's my role.
Mm-hmm.
Telling them off, kicking off, but these girls had been raped because they couldn't ring their mum because they shouldn't have been where they were, so they got raped. If that's not an indication to follow that, safeguarding advice, I don't know what to say to people.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I feel like my parents, if I was in trouble, they would have come and got me. But there was always still something inside me that was like, I can't let them see who I really am because I'm not very nice. Do you know that kind of thing? Like I know I shouldn't be doing this. They don't even know I'm here.
Yeah.
Things like that. So I have an experience where I used to help the milkman when I was a kid, so from the age of 13 to 18. But you're automatically in quite a grown-up world. And I was just a 13-year-old, so I was surrounded by men who were talking inappropriately.
Yeah.
And I once had a postman pin me up against a wall and like snog my face off, basically. And I never told my parents this. And in fact, it only came out after I got divorced, when I was in the middle of yoga, because I was trying to do some breathing into womb space.
Oh, okay.
And then this memory came up that this had happened to me. And I never told anyone because I was like, that was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been a bit flirty with him.
Yeah.
And I'd led him on.
You were a child.
I was 13 years old.
You were a child. And that's the attitude that we've been fed, which is girls are sexualized and it's always the girl's fault.
And at the age of 13, I thought it was a grown-up.
A child.
Yeah,
That's a child.
Yeah.
And they say things about children and the teenage girls, and I'm like, yeah, child. Still a child. Still a child.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. Still a child. Doesn't matter what you think. I was going to Tuxedo Junction. Everybody who's over my age will remember Tuxedo Junction in Newcastle. And I'm sorry if they get into trouble, but it's a long time ago, and I was 14, and I would go to Tuxedo Junction.
I have the equivalent in Birmingham.
Nobody was safeguarding me.
No.
I was 14. That's horrific.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have been a naughty girl, because years down the line, my mother was referring to one of my nieces who was in a nightclub, age 14, and my mother said, is she a naughty girl? And meaning, is she having sex?
Mm.
And I said, she's not a naughty girl, she's a child. And she should be looked after properly.
Yeah. She's neither. She's just a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I thought that reminded me back to my childhood when I was clubbing. I'm thinking, no, nobody was safeguarding me. So you didn't even know where I was.
Yeah.
That's another thing, just a whole other conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I just got really good at like smoke and mirrors. Mm-hmm. Like, you think I'm here, I'm actually here. Yeah. We're with that parent who doesn't mind what we do, so we get away with it.
Yeah. But
yes, there's a lot of, I think
there's a lot of
millennials.
A lot of men, when they had that whole investigation into childhood sexual abuse a few years ago, there would have been a lot of men in this area thinking, oh my God.
Yeah.
I hope she doesn't come forward.
I know. I remember hearing a statistic a little while ago where it was like 1 in 4 women have been abused in some way, and I was like, is that all?
That's the reported figures. But in reality, it's going to be like...
Probably every woman you've ever met.
When you see statistics, you have to realise that that is the minimum, because that is the reported. So, for example, 30,000 women a year are murdered on the planet because of partner or ex-partner. That's the ones that have been categorised as partner, ex-partner. What about all of the women who are murdered and it looks like suicide? What about all of the women who are murdered and they don't categorise it as a partner or ex-partner? What about all the suicides? Why are women committing suicide? What about all the attempted suicides? 30 women a day attempt suicide. 20% of teenagers are in or have been in abusive relationships.
Mm-hmm. So can you talk us through, I guess, like what we need to look out for?
Okay, red flags.
And
Red flag behaviours
yeah,
at the
what
beginning.
red flags should we not run through, please? You know that song.
Okay. I don't know that song. Yes, I do.
I keep on
yes, I do.
running through those red flags.
Yeah.
I know it's bad, but I do. I always do this.
Yeah, it's quite scary, isn't it? But things, red flags, when somebody cracks a joke at your expense. So then you say, well, that's not funny. And you're hurt. If somebody you care about, you know, when you start a relationship and you feel, you have hope, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
I hope this works and he's lovely or she's lovely. And then something happens and you've got these little rose-coloured goggles on. And when you've got the rose-coloured goggles on, all the flags are red. So you just don't know.
Yes.
But if you have somebody crack a joke at your expense and you say, I don't think that's funny, and you feel quite hurt. And then if they say to you, I'm really sorry, I didn't realise, and they take that on board, that's fine, because you could be talking to somebody who they're normal in their home in their surroundings where people say nasty things. That might be their normal. And I'm not saying every bloke's a red flag when he does a red flag. It's not true, because they can be educated. I did some work in Sunderland and we had mixed gender group, and that was great. But if somebody cracks a joke at your expense and then you say it wasn't funny and they say, oh, you've got no sense of humour, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And then you explain to them why it's not nice, and they say, oh, you just can't take a joke.
Yeah.
You stop seeing them. Like, that's it for me. I'm at an age now, I'm pretty brutal. I wish I knew this when I was 14.
Yeah.
But stuff like that, where somebody says something at your expense, or a backhanded compliment, for example. So you're a brunette, and he says, I usually prefer blondes, but I like you. Backhanded compliment. I don't usually go for older women. Or I don't usually go for women who've got kids. And that was real for me, because I got 3 kids. I was a single parent.
I've had that experience too.
I wouldn't entertain somebody. It's a privilege to meet my children.
Yeah.
And it's a privilege I wouldn't be affording that person.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be really careful, because we all want love.
Yeah.
We all want those relationships. Also things like, you know that there's a technique where you mirror somebody's behaviour. That's really scary. So saying, when you meet somebody, you know, when you go and have a date and it's your first date, and well, what kind of things do you like? And you're getting to know each other, what you like and what you don't like, and the music that you like and the food that you like. Well, if you're with an abuser, that is an intelligence gathering, and they will try to get you to trust them and tell them things that you wouldn't normally say to people. If you're with an abuser, they will use that down the line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if, for example, you've had some mental health issues, you've had a period of depression, and you disclose that to them, they will say down the line, oh, well, she's crazy, you know, she's had depression, she's had antidepressants, blah, blah. So stuff like that. So when you're with somebody initially, be careful. It's really actually quite difficult, because you want to trust somebody. You don't want to think, this is a potential abuser and I'm going to have to be really careful about what I say. But if somebody is, you know, mirroring your behaviour, like my first date with my current husband, we were talking about, he has a very eclectic taste in music, and I'm a big Bee Gees fan. Okay? Yeah. If he had turned around to me and said, well, I love the Bee Gees too, how amazing is that? I would have left.
You'd be like, no, you don't.
No chance. That is nonsense, isn't it? You know, no, I love the Osmonds. If he'd said, I love the Osmonds, I'm the youngest of a big family, so my older siblings, my sister loves Johnny Osmond, so I love the Osmonds. I've met some of them. So if the date that I was on had said, oh, well, I love the Osmonds, they're amazing, I would have asked them to sing some of their songs.
Go on then.
Yeah, go on then.
What
Have
do
a
you
crack.
know?
What do you know? Yeah. Because they'll
Can't
mirror.
Yeah.
They'll mirror, and you feel like this thing about the whole twin flames, you know, like your soulmates and all of that.
Yeah.
Stop it. Just stop it. Just be careful about what you're disclosing at the beginning. And be careful when somebody says, I've never met a woman like you. You're not like other women. Because that is an absolute diss on all of the other women on the planet.
Exactly.
And the most important thing, if you're a woman, is to be hanging out with other women.
Yeah.
And know your tribe. Because when women come together, the energy is phenomenal and amazing, and you need that support. And it's not sexist, it's just women need other women to help them through all the things that women have to put up with. And I'm not talking about domestic abuse, I'm talking about, you know, periods and
Being
body
alive.
stuff and boob pain and just being female.
One thing I would add to your list that I've noticed is that kind of over giving of gifts.
Love bombing is a big one. Yeah.
And that, like, because it doesn't just have to be gifts. I mean, that for me, I was like, this couldn't be a bigger red flag because this is weird.
Yeah.
But also, just being...
Speed is a good one.
What's that?
Speed. Not giving speed, obviously, no, that's a drug. But going quickly, like love
like
bombing. So
fast.
trying to get you to think, wow, this is amazing. This guy's fantastic. And if you have come from a former relationship, and it's really hard if you're a single mum, I look back at that time and I think, how on earth did I do that? My childcare bill was more than my mortgage, and I was working full time and had to have a business to pay for the hobbies and the piano and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So if somebody is over egging it, that's what you would call it if you were a nana, wouldn't you? You would say over egging the pudding kind of thing. If somebody's over egging it, that's a red flag. Love bombing is a common strategy. So dangerous is speed, getting things moving really quickly. Because if you have been in an abusive relationship and you've managed to survive that, and then somebody comes along who is showering you with gifts and giving you loads of attention, well, he looks way better than the one that you've survived from. Of course he does. And then down the line you're thinking, oh, bloody hell, I've done it again. Because he's horrible too. And you've just been sucked into that because you need it. You need that love, you need that attention.
Yeah.
You need the sex. So they're love bombing you and moving it really quickly, wanting sex really quickly. You know, there's nobody more loving than a narcissist who is homeless. That's the truth. So they will go full on speed. I say to young girls and the lads, don't get pregnant. Don't get anybody pregnant. Because once you've got that child, you are in a relationship of some description forever.
Yeah.
So, you know, use a condom. Kids don't, what's happening? I was a teenager in the 80s when HIV was, you know, it killed you.
Yeah.
And it's still there. Kids need to be more careful. But don't have sex. Don't get pregnant. Don't get anybody pregnant. Because women can be abusive too. Bearing in mind, like, my experience is at the end of the scale where it's crisis point. The book's talking about the beginning before it's even started.
Yeah.
So it could be anybody who's been abused. Anybody can abuse at that level.
Yeah.
But if you address it at the beginning of the relationship and say, hey, don't talk to me like that. Don't say stuff like that. That makes me unhappy. And they just disregard you. If you put your boundaries in place, lots of people don't even know what boundaries are. You set your standard.
We're still learning.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, isn't it? You know, I would say write down what your non-negotiables are in a relationship. And if they step over the non-negotiables, that's not the relationship for you. And there are literally billions of people on this planet, and that one person is not the only person that you're going to meet. There are literally billions out there who would treat you better.
Yeah.
If somebody's being mean to you, if somebody's making you cry, if somebody's, you know, being full on and then full off and switching it off, not responding to your messages, just bin them. Just don't waste your time. But going fast is a real danger. Getting pregnant is a real danger. Isolating you from your friends and your family. So you go out and you go to the loo while you're out with your mates and you this date that you're with as a group, and then you come back and he says, your best friend was flirting with me while you were at the toilet. Or things like, your mum doesn't like me. What? Come to mine because I don't want to go round to yours because your mum doesn't like me. Subtle. Isolation is a killer, quite literally.
Yeah. And I think, like, I guess, because we see it portrayed in the media at crisis point, people can often think, well, why have they stayed? Why have they let it get to this point? Do you know what I mean? So
why do they stay?
Why do they stay?
Because in an established relationship where there's abuse, leaving is the most dangerous thing to do. Because if you look at the research, the point of separation is the time where you're more likely to be murdered than not.
Yeah.
And if you're in an abusive relationship, you know that. Because your abuser will have said to you, if you leave me, I will kill you. If you leave me, I will kill myself. If you leave me, I will kill the children. So they know. Apart from the fact, I do not have, and most people don't have, a spare house to move into, just like that. Let's just pack a bag and go to our spare house. Doesn't happen. Financial abuse is massive.
Yeah.
I always say to women, when you are planning your family, it doesn't matter what your relationship is like now, because things can go pear-shaped anyway. And you decide who's going to look after the baby. Most women go on reduced hours working after they've had kids. And that's still a thing. And you're financially dependent on the other parent. And that's fair enough if that's what you've agreed. But I would strongly advise women, while you're calculating the family budget, always include 100% pension contributions, even if you've gone reduced hours. Make up your pension contributions. So when the time comes and you retire, if you have stayed together, everything's hunky-dory, you'll have a fantastic retirement because you'll both have 100% pension. Because the majority of women who are separated and single parents are living in poverty in this country. But keeping your pension contributions up, will it give you at least some buffer against that for down the line? And it's just about being realistic about money.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do. I committed career suicide when I had my first child. I went reduced hours. I cut my pension. He went on to get promoted. And then we split up. And it was like, here I am. I've made those mistakes as well. And that's just a bit of advice. Keep your finances right. And also have a separate account.
Yeah,
like I
completely relied on my ex-husband for everything. He was the earner. I stopped working for 10 years. Then you get divorced and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I need a job.
Suddenly you're 16 again, you've got bugger all in the bank.
And I've still got the financial brain of a skint 25-year-old. Because I never needed to. He
financial
came along and
abuse
rescued me.
Is huge. And that doesn't even hit the radar of crisis point. That doesn't, financial abuse doesn't hit the police, the criminal justice system. It's just a thing.
So you don't necessarily need to be threatened with death to not want to leave. You can just feel trapped because you don't know what finances there are.
Yeah.
And you don't know how you'll get out.
It's really difficult to leave. You have to plan. And I would say, because separation, especially in abusive relationship, separation's hard enough in a non-abusive relationship when you just mutually agree that you don't want to be together again. And that's hard enough. But if you've got abuse in the background and you're fleeing abuse, you need a really good plan. So I would suggest you sit down with somebody who's worked in the field of domestic abuse, like contact Women's Aid or something, and come up with a plan so you can leave safely.
Yeah.
Instead of, and definitely do not tell that abusive person that you are leaving them, because that's the risk. That's a huge risk. I mean, if you read Jane Monckton Smith, Professor Jane Monckton Smith is a retired police officer, and she wrote a book called In Control, and it's about how abusive relations follow a pattern. I would advise everybody, every police officer should read that. Every police officer should read Be Kind, No Excuses by me.
Yeah. Because
cops go to crisis point incidents, and when they get there, things might have calmed down. But if you understand what the red flags look like, you will better understand where that victim is coming from.
Yeah.
Not all domestic abuse ends up with somebody getting arrested. And it's because not every incident results in a crime, and women will ring the police before they get hit, and then the cops get there and they go, well, you haven't been hit. Well, what do you want her to do? Wait until she is hit before she phones?
Yeah.
Well, no. Crazy.
Mm-hmm. And it's so, I guess you're often dealing with people who are very charming and just really good talkers.
Yeah.
And the other person's
and usually male.
confidence level is on the floor.
Yeah. I experienced, and people know this, you get a different service depending on how you present as a victim. So if you present as crying, frightened, you get a better care than if you present as kicking off, fighting back, drunk. You get a much worse service. If you're a woman who's consumed alcohol, well, you're just a pisshead, aren't you? And certainly if they turn up and you are, people who take drugs, drug addicts, alcoholics, don't ring the police. They just have to suffer without that intervention, because the police turn up and there's drugs paraphernalia, and then the police go, oh, drugs. And that changes the focus of the whole incident, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So people who have those difficulties in their life don't get the service at all because they can't call.
So, I mean, you talked about Sue's book there, and that's at the very start of it. She talks about that question, why do people stay? But from the research I've done around it, there's a thing around like not even realising you're in one.
Yeah, because a lot of people think that if you're not getting
this
hit,
is normal.
If you're not getting hit, you're not in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And there's a psychological abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. I mean, I talk to women who are older women who don't even know that sex in marriage is
not mandatory and
yeah,
can be forced on
because
you.
it used to be. I mean, a lot of women are raped and think that, well, this is, I have to do my duty. And like, how horrible is that? I don't understand any man who wants to have sex with somebody who does not want to have sex with them. It doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Just what? It just make mad. But that's what happens. I need to have my sexual urges dealt with, and you are the hole that I'm putting it in. And that's basically what it boils down to. And a lot of women don't realise that that's not okay because they haven't been taught any different. And not being hit, it's just the way it is. I mean, I'm surprised women hold it together half the time. And then they go to the doctors and say, I'm depressed. And they're not depressed, they're just married to somebody who's making them desperately unhappy by being abusive and having that sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
But that's the patriarchy, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That sense of entitlement. I will do this. Well, I'm the breadwinner and I bring the money in. Now, in my house, I'm the breadwinner. I would never say that to my husband. Never. It wouldn't occur to me. Why would I? It's their entitlement that does it.
Yeah. And then all the unpaid care is like, well,
oh God,
it's the very least you should be doing.
Don't
get me started.
Let's just talk about the gender gap. There's a lady I know, and she's got a massive Facebook group called Bridging the Gap, and it's full of really young women who are in marriages and relationships, and they have kids. And anybody who's got kids and plays on an Xbox, what are you doing? Why aren't you bathing the kids? Why aren't you feeding the kids? Why are you sitting on an Xbox for hours and hours and hours while everything around you is done? What is that's not a relationship? And this goes on and on and on, like absolutely horrific. And these are young women. I mean, there's gender differentials, what we put up with as older women, but young women are putting up with husbands who play on the Xbox while they do absolutely everything else in the house. All the childcare, because, I'm going to stay at home. I'll go to work, so I come home after an 8-hour shift and I will just look after me and play on a game, and you can do absolutely everything because you don't actually bring money in. Money is not what it's about. Care is what it's about. And they couldn't afford her on their wage most of the time. Couldn't afford her. They should bill the husband at the end of the week. There's your bill.
Hello.
You know,
15 quid an hour minimum.
Minimum. What, to clean dirt, like wipe a dirty bottom of a small child? I would charge £25 a time.
Per bum.
Per bum, every time. And there's a bill at the end of the week, and he can't afford his own wife. And he plays on the Xbox because he brings the money in. No.
It's just disrespect.
Well, that's the bottom line, isn't it?
And
I mean, everybody's like...
I don't want to be here with you, almost.
You're here because this is a house, and I can sleep here, and I can stick this in you when I choose.
And I am your third child.
Yeah, I would
So
rather
you would
be...
look
Well,
after me.
obviously I was a single mum. I'd rather be a single mum than be married to a person and still be a single mum.
Yes.
Because really that's what was.
I think that's the glimpse that you get when you've been married, then you get divorced, and you have that like, oh, I actually got a bit of time back because I'm
stress-free
of not looking after this extra person. So then actually when you go into your next relationship, you're like, I need to be really careful that you're enhancing my life and not making it harder.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not an easy pattern to spot, because it might be a bit further down the line. You're like, oh, we've been dating for a year, and I've just realised that you come in and take the piss out of my food, or like I've been at work all day, I've picked my kids up, sorted them out, made your tea. Are you enhancing my life?
And you're exactly right. Enhancing it is the most important thing, isn't it? Because what's the alternative? You don't have to be in a relationship. Christ, now you can just go and pick somebody up, shag them, and then if that's what you need, just go and do that. You never have to see them again. And that's fair enough if that's your choice. But you don't have to get into a relationship with somebody who disrespects you.
No.
Especially when you're a single parent and you are paying the bills.
Exactly.
And how many men? We have a department in government to chase up absent parents. There's an actual government department to do that in the UK. I find that appalling, where you have to take a parent and say, this is your child or these are your children. Now you have to financially, support them because the relationship's in. There's a bloody department for it. That's crazy. Why don't they just do what they should do? Because they've got no shame, they've got no honour, and they have no integrity.
Yeah.
But respect's a big one. Love will come and go throughout the relationship. As long as you respect each other, that will sustain the times when you think, oh, God, I'm going to kill this person. Because we all do it. Like, look at them and you go, I love you very much, but God, I could kill you.
Yeah. I still respect you.
I still respect you, and I'm not going to stab you because I respect you.
That's a really nice way to end, because I feel like
not that I would ever stab my husband.
No, of course not.
Not today.
No. There are times you might think about it. But yes, I think
of course he probably thinks the same.
Yeah, of course, we're all human.
Yeah. It's not what you say, it's what you do.
Yes.
Yeah. So when somebody says I love you, but then punches you, or punches the wall beside you, which is probably worse.
Terrifying.
Yeah. I'm never going to hit you again. Well, he hit me once. The end.
Yes.
And always leave after the first lie, because it's probably not the first lie.
Yeah, you've just caught the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an amazing chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And where can we find you online?
RiePearson.com.
Lovely. And then we've got your book.
The social is Be Kind, No Excuses.
Be Kind, No Excuses.
_kick on Instagram.
And tell me quickly about your retreat.
Oh, the Women Only Wellness Gathering. It's an amazing annual event.
Street.
So I met a lady who's got a charity where she works with women who are in recovery from substance abuse. And obviously I work with people who are, some of the people I work with have been in abusive relationships, but mostly I'm about teenagers. So we created a gathering for women, and it's an annual event, Women Only Wellness. And we bring together lots of women in business who run self-care, well-being type businesses. So we've got all kinds, like yoga, Reiki, sound baths, which are amazing.
Oh, I love a sound bath.
We do a bit of foraging. We have a lady from Gosforth who comes and does a hula hoop workshop, all kinds of anything. Because, if you said, what would you like to do? What's your self-care? Lying in a bath with a book and candles is not my self-care. That is actually my torture. And it's about finding what your personal self-care is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we do. We bring women together who deliver workshops on a campsite in North Yorkshire, and it's fantastic. But we've this year decided to do one for men as well. So Escape for Men is a one-day event on the 1st of June, where we're doing pretty much the same thing, workshops for men, to let them find what their well-being is, because this, men's mental health is very important. The suicide rate in the northeast is shocking, so we're bringing men into it now.
And where can people find information?
If they just go on Eventbrite or go on the website, it's all on there.
Okay, great. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right then, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Happily Ever After with me, Hannah Harvey. It would be wonderful if you could leave a review and subscribe. And of course, if you have a friend who might enjoy this episode, please do pass it on. For anything else, you can get in touch with me either through Instagram @mumsdays or my website mumsdays.com.